So in the meantime, thanks for having me. My name is Thomas Schulte, 55 years old, married, some children, and started as electric engineer. I've been working for 7 years on high temperature ceramic materials, and then I made a weird shift into purchasing, and since 5 years I'm responsible for the governance of purchasing at Bosch. Thank you. Worldwide. And when I started the job, there was also this topic of sustainability and a potentially upcoming supply chain due diligence law. This has now taken, in the meantime, a large percentage of my work, and I would like to share some thoughts with you on that. So the question from my side was, let's go back too fast. Oh, this is okay. No touch screen. Okay. The question is, can governance, or to which extent can governance be an adequate answer to all the challenges that are coming up, sustainability, resilience, regulative requirements? And I don't want to bother you with facts and figures from Bosch, but there are some aspects I would like to mention because it's important for the story. So it's a huge company, 90 billion sales. We have 4 different business sectors. Automotive, industrial, consumer, energy, and building technology. So we are working in very different markets, and the markets are also developing quite, let's say, heterogeneously with respect to sustainability ambitions and other requirements. Whenever I'm talking about purchasing organization, we are talking about 10,000 associates, and these 10,000 associates have to be trained in all the new developments. So it's like the picture of the tanker. Yeah, you have to steer very forcefully to get the whole crowd into your direction. We are talking about 24,000 direct suppliers, so this is only our direct supply base, and some spend. So again, it's a big shift we have to do here. And when I started in 2019 in this job, the statement was simple. Okay, you are responsible for governance, so what you should make sure is that the purchasing organization is, let's say, protected. We are working with minimized risk. And you also have to enable organizational transformation, because Bosch, as you know, has been producing a lot of diesel and combustion engine components and will not do that in the future. So business is shifting in parallel. And so when I started and when I look at that right now, I can say I never expected that this claim would become so true. And before we get into that, it's important for me to start with the people issue, because we can jump into a lot of requirements, we can jump into a lot of change, digitization, you name it. But the most important here is the people. Because if we are losing the people on our journey, if we don't tell them the purpose, if we don't give them direction, we can invent a lot of things, but it's not going to happen. So that is, for me, the first key takeaway. We need to make sure that we have flexible working conditions for the people, a personal career path to tell them what has your job been yesterday and what is your job going to be tomorrow, because some of those jobs are changing. We have maybe not so much to tell them about the purpose of going into a sustainable or resilient business, but it's something that we need to deliver. It's not going to be there automatically. So don't just assume that your people understand this purpose. I think you also have to make it tangible. Diversity is one issue, and continuous learning another one. And I think we also face that different, let's say, people, characters, maybe ages, are prone to different learning concepts. So just to post some nice videos may be good for a certain part of the, let's say, people base, but not for everybody. So it's quite complex here. And talking about complexity, we were challenged with some questions. For instance, if we are talking about sustainability, CSR, resilience, and we are talking about 10,000 associates, if we're talking about 24,000 suppliers in different industries, is it reasonable to start with a standardized approach? Or just tell the business divisions, hey, do what you want, adapt, and that's fine? Our answer has been no, we need a standard. Why? Because I cannot explain to a public why certain parts of the organization are working quite sustainable, why others don't care. And if you think about human rights, that's even more tricky. Yeah, you cannot tell, well, this one entity is fine with a little bit of child labor. Yeah, this is no story you can. I mean, it's not our ambition, but it's also no story you can tell. So we said, yes, we need to have standards, at least minimum standards throughout the whole organization to be credible. And then, as we're talking about a big organization, and Bosch is used to work along project, we are the masters of project and project management. Yeah? So everything is planned, everything is thought through. You apply for a budget, you have a steering committee, you do reporting, all that. It's not working if you look with respect to sustainability and the changes that we have. So we said, okay, we're going to ignore all the standards we have in our project management at Bosch, and we just start working. So we were putting in an agile approach. We said everybody who wants to join in, you put in resources and we care that they are managed well. And in the meantime, we have a kind of shadow and parallel network, which is doing a lot of the sustainability and resilience work and doing that quite well. Walking the extra mile, the extra 1.5 mile, and maybe even also walking the extra second mile. But it's quite fast and it's actually also convincing to the organization that with these, let's say, maybe different approaches, you can achieve a lot of speed. I talked about that before. If we want to be credible, we also have to make sure that one reason to do this is to make sure that we secure the brand reputation, which is important for Bosch. So our reputation is for standards, for quality, for excellence, and therefore we need this standard approach. And we cannot do everything on our own. In the past, Bosch also used to try to develop and invent everything on their own, and we have been quite successful. With the increasing complexity, that's not possible anymore. So we are working with partners. We are working with partners on the AI side, IT side, Carbon Disclosure Project, one of our partners for gathering CO2 data. Why? Because, for instance, gathering CO2 data is not our core competence. So let somebody do this job who is well experienced. And we are working with different partners here, also changing partners, because to be flexible in that market is of high importance for us. And yes, there are a lot of things we have to do. For instance, involving the supplier, the supply base. So we have to inform the suppliers. Some of the big suppliers are on the same journey as we are. We have small suppliers in very different countries, and they are maybe not so eager or not so motivated or maybe not even informed to go with us. So we have to inform them. We are doing that via, for instance, our homepage. We have sent out and have them sign complete new contracts. So the contracts a supplier for Bosch is signing today is, let's say, 50%, 40% different of what they used to sign 10 years ago, because we have new requirements. We have used very different ways to approach the supply base, via conferences, via supplier days, invitation letters. So what I said about involving the people here, it's the same. We have to use very different channels in order to reach everybody. We have even set up an own consultancy. Why? Because we went our journey to zero emissions in scope 1 and 2 already in 2020. So Bosch as an enterprise is CO2 neutral since a few years. But we have learned a lot on that journey. And we said, okay, let's share that. So we have now a consultancy within Bosch. And if you're a supplier of us, you can ask for a consultancy and we help you on your journey. There are videos, trainings available, and of course, it's a little bit carrot and stick. So we also have something like a Global Supplier Award for Sustainability to also motivate our suppliers to go with us. And the suppliers are very important to us. I said before, we are CO2 neutral. Well, that's great, but that's just 1%. Scope 1 and 2 for Bosch is just 1% of our CO2 emissions. 450 million tons are still to be covered, and you see that 7% of this is purchase, service, and goods. Okay, I could say only 7%, so let downstream do the job, and I'm just sitting there and waiting for the CO2 to be reduced. Obviously, it's not going to work. Why? If you look at our product portfolio, we would have this gas heaters on the left side in the middle. I don't know, is it? Okay. and you have electric drill on the right side. The CO2 emissions of those products are completely different. A gas heater is burning gas, 30 years. So the emissions are definitely on the downstream side. And yes, I can wrap a very nice, let's say, metal sheet, a stainless sheet around it with green steel. It's not going to change the footprint. Yeah, it's marginal, 0.00, whatever. If you look at the power tool on the right side, it's around 62% of the emissions upstream. So the big difference is, do I use plastic material, standard plastic, or recycled plastic? Because the use of this drill, obviously, as it is electric, calculated from a taxonomy standpoint, is CO2 neutral. That is why in purchasing, we now have to think about how do we support the different business areas in their ambition to go to reduce CO2 footprint. And I can easily do that by just looking at different countries. Take a turn part company, a turn part supplier to Bosch. Going to the right direction now. And I take this virtual turn part supplier and place it in India. So if this supplier is connecting his machines to the Indian public electric grid, the green energy share is below 25%. Usually it's about 10 to 12%. I take the same virtual supplier and place it in Brazil. He plugs into the Brazilian grid 47% green energy. So just by selecting the supplier location, I can easily impact my CO2 emissions upstream. Of course, with consequences. We are talking about transportation and everything else. But theoretically, of course, I can just map our suppliers, look at the ideal distribution of energy, and then get to a better footprint. Long story short here, there's a lot we have to think about sourcing strategy in order to make sure that we actually achieve our CO2 reduction. And we are supported also by a lot of regulation, taxonomy, measuring. And most of you will be aware about the CSRD, which is coming up. So a lot of reporting within the EU. Who knows about CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism? Yeah, okay, so I would say it's 1/3. Actually, everybody should know it because it started already 1st of October. Every enterprise in Europe has to report on the 31st of January next year on the emissions CO2 emissions that you have received in this quarter between October 1st and December 31st. So just to say there is a high dynamic in this, there's maybe not the 100% awareness also in the supply base and a lot of support required to make sure that we are following this reporting and requirements. And for us, this means sometimes to also distinguish between what do we want to report and what do we need to report. One example, EU is asking us, we can increase our green share if we report on recycled material in the packaging that we have received from our suppliers. Okay, so I can start collecting this. I can try to document this. The documentation is not an Excel file. I need to show proof evidence from all suppliers. This is my package I've sent to Bosch, and it included whatever 16% of recycled material. Now, I have one figure for you. We are currently checking 116,000 part numbers with respect to steel and iron we are importing into the EU for different reasons. But just iron and steel-based products, 116,000 part numbers. Now, if I want to report on the packaging of that, you can estimate the effort, and I can ask myself, is that worthwhile to collect all these tiny bits and figures to then finally maybe report to the EU Commission that I have whatever, 1,000 tons of recycled material? Maybe not worthwhile. Therefore, for us, it's important to understand the benefit and also the effort we have on that reporting. And coming back to this child labor or other aspects, of course, there is no tolerance. And I can just say, okay, there's 0 and that's it. I cannot balance that. And when we're talking about how to do this, well, we try to cover the requirements with existing IT systems. Why? Because I cannot tell a buyer, okay, first in the morning you log into IT system 1, it tells you the human rights status in your supply chain, then you log into the CO2 reporting, then you look into the water reporting, then you look into the grievance mechanism, then you look into whatever. People will be dead. Yeah? So we have to make sure that we are kind of combining that in one dashboard for them to understand what they have to do. And if we think about what we have to do, things are changing. Take a standard supplier in 2010. The standard supplier has signed contracts with me and is delivering to my favor, so it's fine. Actually, no effort. So I would maybe negotiate the supplier once a year, but effort 0. Well, in 2025, I have to report verified figures on the CO2 emissions, on human rights status, and. So the supplier, the average supplier that didn't mean effort for me in 2010 is now creating effort. Take this effort, multiply it with 24,000 suppliers, and then you can think about what this means for our supply chain management. Yeah. So we had a journey with Dun & Bradstreet, and we came up with, well, an estimation. Maybe the effort is 15% higher. Don't nail me on that one. It can be 5, it can be 20, but it's not 0. If it was 15%, I have to reduce my supply base by 15% of the suppliers to just make sure that my effort for managing the supply base is the same. Think about that. Probably not so easy if other people are asking for, please localize my production because I want to have a resilient supply chain. So this to be said, there's quite some complexity in that with respect to sourcing, with respect to sourcing decisions, and also with respect to managing suppliers. So our, let's say, key is we need to make sure we have very consequent rollouts. At least at Bosch, we used to have some very nice IT projects, lighthouse projects. And if you then ask who in the world has implemented that, yeah, maybe 5%, 10, 80%, but 80% still is not enough. Because if I ask 80% of the organization for a CO2 report, I still have to collect manual for 20%. So this consequence and rollout for us is really important. Cybersecurity as another factor, I know I have to come to an end, and getting suppliers connected. Finally, also data quality. So my takeaways, lessons learned from the last years, as the regulative landscape is developing very, very quickly, and there is quite an increasing complexity, we need to still be very flexible. So we cannot just plan for the future, but we have to be very adaptive in our approaches. And even though sustainability is key, we also need to purchase in a competitive way. So we have to focus on cost, quality, and resilience somehow in parallel, which makes it quite complex. And as there are limitations with respect to data availability, you can ask 1,000 questions to 1,000 suppliers. You will not get the full set of answers. So there is some uncertainty we have to deal with. And so we need to be a little bit pragmatic there. And maybe the last takeaway here, governance and operations, that is my finding now. Well, we can find a way to provide efficient approaches, but we have to put our heads together and get some good strategies there. So if you want to elaborate on that a little on, I will be here today, tomorrow, and I'm looking very much forward to get into a discussion with you. Else I'm also available via LinkedIn, and I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you.